What's going on, beautiful people? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central. Let me apologize right now before we even get started. I can't find my glasses. I can't see shit. So if I'm not looking directly at the camera, I apologize. I can't see shit. So I'm just going to be real with you. On today's episode of Chicago Bulls Central, we're going to talk about Bleacher Report has ranked the Chicago Bulls young prospects 1 through 3. We're going to talk about that rating. We're also going to talk about and ask the question, how does Billy Donovan's system continue to evolve to better use the players? And then lastly, we'll talk about Dalen Terry and McCormaker. We'll get into all that and more on today's Chicago Bulls Central.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
All right, Bulls fans, my inability to see aside, right? And I truly can't see. My inability to record, to see aside, I wanted to talk about this, right? We've talked a lot about the continuity, right? The fact that AK and Eversley did decide to bet on continuity, what that meant for the team, what that meant for the construction of the team, how this team does continue to improve, even looking at players like Ayo Dosunmu, ECT taking leaps this season and what that means for the Chicago Bulls. But we haven't really talked, and I've touched on it a little bit, is how Billy Donovan's system needs to continue to evolve since continuity is a thing. Since we're going to have the same starting five that we had to start the season last season. Now, they didn't play very many games together because of injuries to Lonzo Ball and Patrick Williams. But because we're betting on continuity, how does this system better utilize the players that are in this team and on this team? Because, and this is not to make an excuse for the players, because it's not. Nikola Vucevic missed shots, he missed bunnies, he missed a lot of shots that he should have made and usually did make in his career. But there were times as well where Billy Donovan did not put the players in the best situations. Now, one could say with that is Lonzo Ball first up. Lonzo Ball being the point guard on this team. He is the starting point guard. He is the one. And there were several times during the season where he just became and was forced to be just a three-point threat. And the times that he did really get to be creative was out on the fast break. And that's fine, right? Like, those are good parts of Lonzo Ball's game. He's good at forcing turnovers, things like this with his defense. So yes, and he's a great, amazing three-point shooter. So you utilize the two possibly best aspects of Lonzo Ball's game last season in the Bulls offense, and that's fine. But for this offense to continue to evolve, especially if you're not going to add any big-time players, the only way that it can evolve is better utilizing and unlocking some more of the skill set of the players that are on this team. And one of those players that I have to mention is Lonzo Ball. So with that being said, and wanting to be able to utilize some better is that, and I know some Bulls fans don't know this and they think that Lonzo doesn't have the ability because he hasn't flashed. Now, yes, Lonzo Ball's mid-range shooting does need to be worked on some. Does he have a nice layup or floater package? No. He needs to work on that. Absolutely. But you can't expect a player to, outside of the offseason, to really work on something if you don't allow it. And so that's kind of my first thing. Lonzo Ball needs to be unlocked a little bit more in the half-court offense, period. And be able to do a little bit more creativity. You still want to run most of your offense through DeMar DeRozan because he is a great passer and because of his inability to really be a volume three-point shooter. I understand that. Right. You have to do that. But it needs to be more opportunities for Lonzo Ball, in my opinion, to be able to create more in the half-court offense, to actually run the offense, to be that point guard that we know that Lonzo Ball can be. And it's going to, yes, we'll see how long DeMar is with the Chicago Bulls. Next season's the last season on his contract. Lonzo Ball's still young. He'll still have more time left with the Chicago Bulls. But with that being said, that's one of the things that I would like to see on how this offense can evolve. The second thing is consistently working from the inside out. Now, Nikola Vucevic has his own issues and his own things with not making certain shots at times. So yes, that is a thing. But there were several times last season in which Nikola Vucevic was cooking in the first quarter, cooking in the second quarter, cooking in the first half, and then he got 2, maybe 3 shots in the second half of the game. That is not going to cut it. Feed the hot hand a little bit more. I know we have ball-dominant players with DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine, but again, I'm not saying the whole offense needs to change because for them to be effective, Zach and DeMar do have to have the ball in their hands. But you need to still go to the high hand. You need to feed the big man, especially when he's playing well. Use him more effectively in the offensive pick and roll, not turning him into a spot-up shooter, because that is not Vooch's game. Those type of things. Play a little bit more from the inside out. Now, Zach LaVine, with him, I want to see them run more pin downs, more screens, for him to do more things off ball. You have a ball dominant player in DeMar DeRozan and one in Zach LaVine. And guess what? Zach LaVine is, to me, the better off-the-ball player and has more versatility because he can go out there on the three-point range, and I want to see more ball movement from Zach LaVine and for the team as a whole. Now, DeMar DeRozan is kind of DeMar, right? DeMar's going to do what he has to do. DeMar is a very skilled and good scorer in this NBA, but he's a limited one. Let me be clear with that. DeMar DeRozan he's creative in the mid-range. He's creative in his passing, but you're not going to get three-point shooting from DeMar DeRozan. So because of that, you have to utilize the other players around that better. And one, Patrick Williams. We need to see Patrick Williams gets more opportunity, period. And by that, he has to also take that, make those shots confidently, not pass up things, be more aggressive when he does get his opportunities. All those things need to happen. But we need to see a little bit more opportunity from Patrick Williams to do some more things as well. And it's not easy. I say these things and it's easy to list, but it's not going to be an easy task by any stretch of the imagination because guess what? They have a lot of players on this team that need certain things. And while Patrick Williams is a versatile player, and yes, he's a player that you don't have to necessarily work into the calling a bunch of offensive set plays, but guess what? The future of your team is in a way Patrick Williams, is in a way Lonzo Ball, more so than DeMar, more so than Vooch. You need to continue to evolve and grow these players' games. And another thing, on the defensive end, the drop coverage does not work in the NBA. Let's be clear here. Drop coverage for NBA teams nowadays, it works if you have a really good defender at the center or one that has great lateral speed. Vooch is neither. It's neither. So because of that, the drop coverage that we saw with defense, yes, Vooch isn't the best defender, but you didn't put him in or try to put him in the best situations either. Now, that may change with having Patrick Williams and Lonzo Ball hopefully there for most of the season, but we need to see this offense evolve. We need to see the coaching style as a whole evolve on both sides of the ball, and I didn't even get to the bench, right? So, even Kobe White at times has turned into a spot-up shooter when he's more of a scorer, I think. So, as we see this offense evolve more, as we see continuity being bet on, as we see them running back the same team primarily except Goran Dragic, Dalen Terry, and Andre Drummond, we need to see more wrinkles. We need to see more things added to the Chicago Bulls offense and defense to better utilize and put people in better situations. And we'll see. I trust Billy Donovan to do it. Billy Donovan is very much a coach who builds his system around the players rather than trying to make the players fit into a system usually. Now, we didn't see that at big parts of last season, so I hope that does come back and we see a more varied Chicago Bulls offense and one that is not as easy to defend. One thing, the Bulls offense got figured out late in the season, and that contributed to the Bulls only winning 7 games after the All-Star break is because the offense was easy to figure out. Now, hopefully, healthy Zach, healthy DeMar, healthy Lonzo, healthy Patrick Williams, and stuff like that, we can see this offense be a little bit more varied in what they do and what they run, and we need to shoot more three-pointers as well. So let's see. Hopefully that those things tend to happen with the Chicago Bulls team. Now, let's get into the next topic for today. So I'd already planned on talking about the offseason that Dalen Terry had, especially as his first offseason, and what that could mean for the rookie. But then Bleacher Report released this list for every NBA team when they talked about the teams. It was ranking every NBA team's 3 best future prospects. And Lord, do I have something to say with this one for the Chicago Bulls. So the way that they rank, Bleacher Report ranked the Chicago Bulls future prospects are 1 Patrick Williams, 2 Kobe White, and 3 Dalen Terry. And as we know, and this is how you know that some of these Bleacher Report writers don't really pay attention to the teams. As we know, Kobe White is probably going to be shot. There's a big question on what his future is. His future even with the Chicago Bulls? Now, I've gone on to say, and I'm going to maintain on record that I do think that Kobe White still has a lot of potential. I still think Kobe White, whether it's with the Bulls or not with the Bulls, still turns into a heck of an NBA player and probably a really good super sub if he can get consistent. But ranking Kobe White for Bulls fans above a player like Ayo Dosunmu, to where Ayo isn't even listed on this list, is going to raise some serious questions for people who follow the team. And that I don't understand. That's why I say a lot of this is generated to generate talk more than actual analysts. But yes, so Patrick Williams, they talk about Patrick Williams averaging last season 9 points per game, 4.1 rebounds. He hit 51% of his threes in 24.8 minutes per game. And we know that he is a big part and big linchpin and needs to be for what this Chicago Bulls front office wants to see out of him and how he develops. Listen, they've turned rumor trades and everything, turning that down for Patrick Williams, that he's definitely a big part of the Chicago Bulls future. But to list Kobe White above and not to have Ayo Dosunmu on this list, considering the reality of it, it raises some questions. Now, I do think personally I would put Ayo Dosunmu number 2 here and leave Dalen Terry number 3. I wouldn't even list Kobe White. And that's not because I don't believe in Kobe White, but that is there's so many questions around what Kobe White's future even with this team is. Now, yes, Kobe White in the reserve role played pretty good, even as a starter. And this is interesting. As a starter last season, Kobe White averaged 16.5 points, 4.1 rebounds, 4.3 assists on 43% shooting from 3 and 40% shooting from the field. So it's really Kobe. Like I said, Kobe isn't as bad as just the inconsistencies, but Dalen Terry as well. So talking about Dalen Terry, anything that I say about Dalen Terry can also be said about Patrick Williams in this. So let me be clear here, because I know some people may say, "Hey, what about Patrick Williams?" Dalen Terry in his initial offseason, in his starting offseason, has gotten to practice with DeMar DeRozan, go to LA for the 5-on-5 workouts. He had a great summer league in which they really did use him varyingly in that summer league. He started off trying to run the offense through him, then they played him more off-ball, things like that, and he saw some good results in that. But then you play in the Drew League. You practice with the players that have already been on this team, and then you're involved in this practice with Patrick Williams and Paul George yesterday that we got to see pictures of. Dalen Terry is truly soaking up so much in his initial offseason with the Chicago Bulls. 6'7", 195 pounds, I think Dalen Terry is. Can play a bunch of different positions. He's probably going to be more of a wing or 2/3. AK talked in that interview during the summer league that he even can see Dalen Terry playing some small ball 4 at times. Dalen Terry is going to be a Swiss Army knife for the Chicago Bulls team. And I think the question that I want to ask, and I did raise this on Locked On Bulls, is with the offseason that Dalen Terry has had, is he going to push for and take some minutes away from Kobe White, especially if Kobe White starts off this season inconsistent again? Now, no, he's not the shooter Kobe White is. I'm not saying that at all. But when you look at the energy, the defense, the athleticism, the getting up and down the court, especially if Lonzo Ball is healthy, could Dalen Terry take those minutes from Kobe White? Some may say, hey, they're trying to move Kobe White. They're going to keep giving him minutes up until the trade deadline, but they're also trying to win. And while, yes, he's going to have to, it's much like with Ayo Dosunmu. If Dalen Terry gets minutes early in the season, it's going to be because of his energy and defense. And if he can continue to evolve over the course of that, we can see him get more and more minutes even with that. I do think Dalen Terry is going to become a very important player for the Chicago Bulls by the end of this season. That is I did it wrong with Ayo last season. I projected it wrong with Ayo last season. In my preseason predictions, I literally sat here and said, if Ayo gets a lot of minutes on this team, something's gone either horribly wrong or amazingly right. And it was a mixture of both, right? We had a bunch of injuries, but he started off the season getting minutes because things were going amazingly right for what he was showing. And I think the same thing, I don't want to make the same mistake twice. I think that same thing could happen for Dalen Terry. I think as Dalen Terry gets used to the game, gets more acclimated, that we're going to see a bigger and bigger part of Dalen Terry being a part of what the Chicago Bulls team does, and he's going to earn that spot. The competitiveness he has, the dog. We always talk about we need dogs on this team. Dalen Terry brings that mindset. Now, how much he brings of that as a rookie that's still learning remains to be seen, but I do think Dalen Terry is going to show off, and what he's been able to experience in this first offseason is going to be huge for his development. And, to kind of segue, Bobby Portis had an interview in just the other day in which he talked about what Taj and Joakim Noah meant to him early in his career and the fact that there's still people that he goes to. Dalen Terry being mentored by DeMar DeRozan, Dalen Terry having this time where he's gotten to see competitors like Paul George and play against them, play with them. Patrick Williams come in. We heard even in Summer League him jaw-jacking at Patrick Williams. I believe in this kid. And yes, while I was super surprised by that being the draft pick for the Chicago Bulls, everything I've seen from him, everything I've researched for him, it has just exponentially grown my excitement for a player like Dalen Terry. Now, I'm trying to temper those expectations. Well, I'm trying not to let that excitement turn into expectations because in a rookie year, you never know how it's going to go. But in the long run, I do trust and think Dalen Terry is going to be a huge part of what the Chicago Bulls team does. Let me know what you guys think about that down below. Now, I know if everything's kind of all segue together today in a way, and again, I can't see shit, so maybe that's being highlighted in the way that I'm handling this episode, because listen, I can't see shit. But with that being said, McCord Maker, who is a player that I was very impressed with in Summer League. A lot of us were. A lot of Bulls fans, even in the comments, were saying that they hoped that the Bulls were going to be able to find a way to keep them, even if it meant cutting Tony Bradley. I, for one, had said maybe they don't give that two-way contract to Malcolm Hill. Maybe they extend that to McCord Maker because he flashed playmaking, defense, athleticism, shot making, everything in his minutes in the Summer League. Highly impressed with McCord Maker. He actually did sign an Exhibit 10 deal with the Washington Wizards. And the last time the Bulls, a Bulls player that was in our system went to the Washington Wizards and Daniel Gafford, they turned out to be a pretty good player. Now, that doesn't mean anything in reality for McCord Maker, but what I will say is this. Do I think the Bulls missed out? Possibly, right? I can't say for sure or not. McCord Maker signed an Exhibit 10 deal, which is basically a deal that allows a player to come in, go through training camp with the team, but by the start of the season, they have to decide whether they're going to convert that to a minimum contract. It can also be converted to a G League contract or a two-way contract. So it's a versatility on how it's going to go, what final form that may take. But the fact that the Washington Wizards did bring him in, and they've added that flexibility to what they do with him. Shout out to McCord Maker for proving himself in Summer League and coming out of Summer League now getting a deal, regardless of how that deal turns out. They could also cut it, but more than likely they're going to at least keep him on the G League team. And shout out to McCord Maker. Did the Bulls miss out though, right? We have a lot of PTSD. Players like Spencer Dinwiddie, other players that we haven't pulled the trigger on. What I said over on Locked on Bulls still maintains true here with McCord Maker. I still do. I would have loved to see him in the Windy City Bulls to let that call. It was never going to be something though that turned into this season. We see a lot of McCord Maker. It was going to be, hey, G League, maybe in a year or so when Tony Bradley's contract's up, we end up bringing him up if we see enough from him. But the Bulls do have a prospect already at the 4/5 in Marko Simonovic that they think highly of. And hopefully he's ready to contribute some NBA minutes. But I won't lie to you. The skill set that McCord Maker flashed, I would have loved to have that in this Bulls system. But I know there's a lot of the conversation, especially in Bulls fandom, is going to be, we missed out on another one. Let's wait and see what happens to it. Now, I will say this, and I presented this question over on Locked on Bulls, so I'm going to present it here before we go today. If in 3 years, McCord Maker is a better NBA player than Marko Simonovic, what are the chances of that? And that's the question that I don't have the answer to. That's the question that we're going to have to come back and see in a year, 2 or 3 years. Because if it turns out that they missed out on McCord Maker and he ends up being a better NBA player than Marko Simonovic, boy, does some PTSD kick in that way. But we'll see. We'll see the way that it works out. I did want to mention it because it is news here, and I know that it was a player that a lot of Bulls fans were interested in, hope that the Bulls were going to find a way to retain. But that is it for today's episode of Chicago Bulls Central. You can follow the show at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullscentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text and our voicemail, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. Every Saturday's mailbag episode, so get those texts and our voicemails in. But that is it for me for today. I love you guys. Like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. Peace, y'all, and see red.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.